To the Nutritious and Delicious podcast. I'm your host, Bethany, and I've been in the health and wellness space for over 17 years. As a previous health nurse, now a certified holistic nutritional consultant, I help clients with their hormone health, fertility, and family health. Join us on this journey as we connect with experts from around the globe, sharing insights and personal stories along the way. So, Dr. Morgan Meese is actually a physical therapist and a business coach who empowers healthcare providers to break free from the corporate system. She helps them launch successful cash-based practices and build a life of freedom and fulfillment. So this is amazing. I'm loving going to talk to you today about all of this. But we're actually going to go today into Morgan's personal story. So this is going to be called From a Health Crisis to a Thriving Practice. So Morgan, I would love for you just to kind of go straight into sort of how you got started and where you are today, basically from your story.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to jump all the way back into kind of like the childhood stuff as well?
Sure. Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah. So, um, all of the lore leading up to where we are today. Um, so I have like a few different chapters in my story, I would say. And if we go all the way kind of like back to the beginning, the first chapter that kind of started everything off was when I was about like 11 or 12. I was diagnosed with a kidney disorder.
Mhm.
And it just kind of came out of nowhere. No like family history that I know of, no
Mm,
lifestyle factors like to cause it.
right.
It just all of a sudden I was having like weird symptoms and got the diagnosis. And at that time, I had seen a nephrologist who was a positive influence, but because my family was a military family, we moved around a lot. And
Mhm.
after my diagnosis, we had moved from Virginia up to Connecticut, and I had to start seeing a new provider up there. And that provider, I remember being in like seventh or eighth grade, I started seeing that nephrologist, and they had told me that due to the fact that I had this kidney disorder, um, I most likely was going to have to be on a steroid medication and or
Mm,
other medications for the rest of my life. And I was going to have to, and this is like the most important thing to me, that nephrologist told me that I was not going to be able to ever play sports again.
ah,
And that I had to be like very, I guess, like careful in terms of like my like fitness and physical activity.
yeah,
Um, and at that point, I had just started getting into, I guess, like more, uh, I guess, like advanced level athletics, I suppose, like advanced youth athletics and
right.
doing like travel softball. I was very active in my school sports as well, playing sports throughout the year and like physical activity has been and like always will be just like a really big part of my life. And I remember, thinking in my little like 13, 14-year-old brain when that nephrologist had told me I couldn't play sports anymore. I was just like, no, no, no. Like I'm gonna keep doing sports.
Yeah,
Because like I knew like from like a scientific standpoint, like physical activity is always going to be a good idea,
yeah,
to help you live your best life. And like it was like good for like my mental emotional health and also like my social health. Like it's where all of my friends were.
right.
Um so I continued, I guess you could say, against doctor's orders. I
Mm,
continued playing sports and obviously like not doing anything crazy. I was just playing team sports. And with the help of my parents, like continued to have like a very like healthy lifestyle, I would say. I know my mom was always really big into helping me research different things to help like support the health of my kidneys.
mhm,
And over time, I ended up going to see a different nephrologist who had a totally different outlook on the matter. He was, like he was great. He was like, do all the sports as long as like you're safe and like your testing like looks fine. Absolutely. Um, and it was, I think, January of 2012, so about like 6 years after being diagnosed. That nephrologist had me take like my last pill. I got off of medication, and since then, I've been in remission now for almost 13 years.
Wow.
Um, and I think like a big part of that was, continuing to stay physically active. I had parents who were very like on top of helping me with my nutrition and like overall wellness. And like I also kind of think that there was like a little bit of power of suggestion like mentally where I decided I wasn't going to keep having the kidney
Yeah,
disorder.
right.
So, like myself and my body like work together to help make me healthy again. And so that was kind of like the first chapter and like the first place where like I really got into like health, fitness, wellness, and like learning all about that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what led into chapter 2 and into my professional career. Um, so yeah. Do you want to jump into that piece
Yeah.
next?
Well, first of all, I kind of have my own questions for you, I guess, really,
Yes.
because how interesting talking to somebody that has like such a crazy diagnosis at a young age. And you said there was no explanation for it. It wasn't in your family.
Mm-mm.
Kind of
Nope.
my nurse in me kind of goes back to sort of like what's actually going on in the body. So I guess in terms of like when they recommended no sports, my thinking is they're saying no sports. Is that because they don't want you getting like kicked in the back or something because your kidneys are there, or like your kidneys are your filtration system? So the other thing would be you're sweating more, like, the sodium, potassium, all that kind of stuff goes through your kidneys as well. Like what were they kind of saying? Like, why were they saying like, no sports, like you can't move, like don't do
Yeah.
anything?
I know, and, like, from the sounds of it, as you're talking about things, I can't remember, like, 100%, like, the reason why she said not to, but I think, like, part of it was along the lines of, like, the, like, contact sports and everything, um, but, I mean, I played softball, basketball, volleyball, soccer, I ran cross country, so, like, most of those are not, like, super, like, contact sport
No.
anyway, or
Right.
even, like, if I were to just, like, take up, like, weightlifting and, like, cardio regimen or something, like, that wouldn't have any contact. I think that my doctor was just very, very much about being like, "Just put her in a bubble, and then
Right.
nothing bad will happen."
And we can't live our lives in a bubble, as we know.
Yeah,
So,
especially, like, a kid.
yeah, you tell a kid, "Don't eat this," or whatever, they're gonna go do the opposite anyways. But maybe I think because do you think it was because of your age that you sort of already said it's almost like you said you didn't wanna own the diagnosis. It was like, "Well, that isn't mine." Like, "I don't want it.
Yeah.
You can take that back because 'cause I'm still gonna do the sport." So where do you think your mindset was when you were that age?
Yeah, I mean, like, it was just I mean, I had just moved to a new school. I was making all of my friends through doing the sports that I was doing.
Okay.
And it was something that was really fun for me. And I was like, well, if you take away like sports, that's like most of my life.
Right.
Um, and like even at like such a young age, like I knew that sports was always going to be something that would be part of my life, and I just wasn't willing to like settle with taking it away when it was
Right.
something that was so ingrained in me.
It sounded like it was more so for the peers, for around you, and yeah, the physical activity too. And as we know with any kind of sport or workout, it's not just good for our body, but I think it's also good for that mindset too. And it makes you feel good as you're doing it. And it's the participation in coming together as a group. So, good on you to do that. And I think it like your parents, like you said, they had a big role kind of helping you into remission. And it sounded like your mom was doing a lot of research, and like, what was some of sort of the pivotal moments in that journey? Like, were there anything that maybe that you felt held back, or, um, yeah, really just kind of what was going on in sort of your mindset? Like, even when it came to eating or drinking or things like that, like, because obviously that has a big part in sort of the kidneys as well and what you're eating and drinking. So, really, what were you doing sort of around that?
Yeah, I mean, like, besides having, like, I'd say, like, 80/20, like, healthy diet, with, like, nutrition being, like, very balanced. Other things that, like, my mom would help me with is, like, I would drink a lot of cranberry juice, or take, like, cranberry supplements as well, and water was just huge. Like, I was always drinking water, to help, like, flush anything out, but, one of the medications that I was on, could make me dizzy too, like, if
Mm,
I wasn't drinking enough water, and so, like, that was big, especially, like, sports aside, like, just being able to, like, go to school and, like,
yeah,
function well and everything, like, I had to stay really hydrated, and that was something that was, like, a little bit of, like, a thing that I kind of needed, like, special help with, I guess, like, throughout school because I always was drinking water, always had water with me. I would have to go to the bathroom a lot
right.
more, and so that was, like, a little thing that I, like, kind of faced that was, like, a little bit weird, like, throughout school is, like, sometimes, like, teachers wouldn't let kids, like, go to the bathroom because I wanted them to be, like, in class or
Yeah,
whatever. But obviously, like, I can't just, like, keep my pants.
yeah.
And I think there was, like, one point, I think, where I told my mom, that, like, one of my teachers, like, didn't let me go to the bathroom despite having, like, a doctor's note and
Oh my goodness.
everything. And she just, like, laid into the
Oh,
teachers at my teacher conference,
yeah,
because she was like, "My kid has, like, a medical thing, like, you have
yeah,
to let her go to the bathroom," and also, like, I was such, like, a sweet, like, good student, like, I wasn't, like, getting
yeah,
up to anything by
right.
going to the bathroom. So, like, that was something that was, like, a little bit different, I suppose, like, in my experience, like, growing up with the kidney disorder, and, I mean, it's something that, like, I continue to this day. It's like I always have, like, a water bottle with me.
I like those. I've seen those jugs before. It reminded me of those jugs where it has like a saying on each, like as you drinking, and it's like "good
Yeah.
job," like keep going, like or something, or it's like lunch, breakfast, dinner. And I've seen people like that, and my God, like using them, and I'm like, that's such a really good method because it's like that goal orientated,
Yeah.
um, way of kind of getting that in. That really sucks. So that was kind of your experience, but it doesn't sort of surprise me, unfortunately, with like the
Yeah.
whole because it is sort of the regular school sort of thing and like the regular corporation type of thing as well where you're expected to stick to a standard, right? And you're not
Mhm.
fitting into that standard and you're therefore disrupting everything. But
Yeah.
again, it sucks because it's like you have the medical diagnosis and I'm really glad that your mom vouched for you. So
Yeah.
that's being a good parent. So good job, mom.
Yeah.
um, how did this sort of impact you into becoming a physiotherapist? So kind of guide me into like your young adulthood and how you got here.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, like, I had, like, this whole experience with the kidneys, and then, doing sports. Like, I remember, like, one time I sprained my ankle playing basketball, and I went to physical therapy, and, like, that's where things kind of, like, sparked that, like, this was, like, a job. And what I loved about it and still love about it to this day is that, like, physical therapy in my eyes means, like, working with people and being able to help them get rid of their pain or get rid of injuries that they have
Right.
through the power of exercise.
Love
Like,
it.
no surgeries, no medications,
Yeah.
no injections. Like, you're just kind of like I did with with my kidneys and my
Right.
little brain. Just, like, deciding that your body can actually, like, fix itself with a lot of things. I'm not making any promises about, like,
Yeah.
systemic issues, of
Yeah.
course, but, like, with typical, like, low key, like, musculoskeletal injuries that you sustain doing physical activity, or even just,
Yeah.
like, in day-to-day life, there's a lot that your body can do for you.
Mhm.
If you just, work with somebody who can help you. And so, like, that's what I have always thought is, like, really, really cool with physical therapy, is you can work with your body to repair your body. um and, like, an analogy that I really like that I have heard some people use is, like, looking at your body as kind of like a garden, and then you learn how to like tend a garden and like keep it like growing.
Mhm.
And that's how I really like to look at it. Um, and that's kind of like why I got into PT in the first place. And, then kind of like a preview, sort of like the next chapter is what I found on the other side of school once I was licensed and everything is that like a typical like corporate healthcare situation is a lot less about like teaching people how to tend their garden and like how to take care of themselves, but it like unfortunately can be built upon mainly trying to like bill for as much money as possible.
Yeah.
And that's never really been something that I'm interested in. And so I ended up leaving like the corporate healthcare setting to start my own practice so that I could help patients in a way that really felt like true to me, like aligned with my own values and trying to like help them live their highest quality of life. And a big part of like my practice now is not only like focusing on the like injury itself, but also like all of the dimensions of wellness, that go into making up a person as a whole,
Right.
and discussing things like nutrition, like sleep, like stress, because all of those things can impact your ability to heal too. So, much more holistic approach, which
Yeah.
has been cool.
And that's exactly what you've kind of been explaining. I find a lot of people go into sort of practices and things like that based on kind of a little bit for themselves as well. Like, same for me, holistic nutrition. It was more like my hormonal health, but I also wanted to help like patients have a better time, sort of like with everything. When you went to school, it made me think sort of like I usually ask people as well, like, what did you sort of learn about yourself? Because I think when you kind of went and did the physio stuff, you probably started to hear things where you were like, I could have probably done this, or if I didn't, if I did listen to these doctors, I probably could have been doing this while I had this diagnosis going on. So I would imagine for people that have sort of gone through similar diagnosis where they've been told you can't do this or you can't do that, and they feel kind of debilitated and then almost feel a little bit robbed, I guess, like when you kind of get to that like learning stage for yourself, like, oh, I love that empowerment that you've kind of explained, but sort of maybe for yourself, like when you went through all the physiotherapy training and everything, like what did you actually learn for yourself in terms of like being able to help yourself first?
Um, in terms of being able to help myself first, when I was going through school to become a physical therapist, I think I think one of the things, and maybe this was even like more so, maybe like post school, is being able to like train around the pain is like a phrase that people use, but like even if you are like in the midst of some kind of an injury, like something is going on, it doesn't mean that you have to stop doing like everything and put
Right,
yourself in a bubble,
right,
essentially. Like there are a lot of different ways where you can like train around the issue. For example, like if I have a shoulder issue, an upper body thing, I can still use my legs,
right.
and do physical activity and still be fine. And I think like that is something that is really powerful because it helps you like continue to make progress every day in whatever you're working on, without having to like completely stop everything that you're doing. And I think like that has really like translated to like a lot of areas of life as well. um and I think like from school too, like something that I've used to help myself, but then of course like obviously have like used with patients, is whenever there is an issue that comes up, some kind of pain somewhere, is considering like all of the possibilities and looking for clues to
Mhm.
like rule things in or rule things out. And kind of like like I always tell people it's like detective work,
Yeah.
which is really cool, to figure out, based on the presentation, here's what it most likely is, and here's why it's, definitely not these other things, which like, it helps me because then I can figure out, like how to treat it or who else I need to talk to help me, fix the problem.
Right.
Um, and it also can provide like a sense of peace too, knowing that based on the presentation, like it's not a serious problem
Right.
and that I'll be okay and everything's fine.
Exactly. How do you sort of channel like your own experience, like everything that you went through? How do you sort of channel that into helping others in business today then?
Yeah. So like through all of these chapters, like kidney chapter, physical therapy chapter, and now like chapter 3 being kind of in the business world, um, I really wanted to continue to be able to help as many people as I could, whether it was like patients across the country, or other clinicians learn that like just because somebody tells you something doesn't mean that's the way that it has to be. It doesn't mean that they're right.
Mhm.
Or it doesn't mean that it's like the best option for you.
Right.
I want to be able to show people that there are other options available to them and it's okay to try things. And so like with that, I mean kind of like with the PT stuff, like we already talked about, like teaching patients, just because your doctor said one thing,
Right.
cool. But, like, here's another opinion.
Right.
And with this information, like, you, the patient, can make an educated decision for yourself. I think that that education is really empowering. And then, like, with clinicians now, as a business coach, and helping other clinicians start their own practices, I think like with physical therapy in particular, like that being my scope, I know for sure that in my schooling, we are trained and educated to leave school and get a job working for another company. And that's just kind of like the traditional route of things. Like
Yeah.
we know that private practice is a thing, but we definitely were not trained to leave school and start working for ourselves.
No.
Nobody talks about it,
No.
and there's a lot to go over in school. So, like, to an extent, like, I understand it wasn't
Yeah.
a priority. But I want to raise awareness around the fact that, like, working for another company, working for a corporation is not the only option that is out there for you as a physical therapist or a healthcare provider. Um, Another option is you just work for yourself. You
Right.
do it yourself and kind of take out the middleman. And there are obviously like tons of pros and cons for either option, but I want people to know that it can be a thing for them. They can do it if they want to. And you don't have to settle for working somewhere that makes you miserable
Right.
just because like people told you to, or just because you thought it was the only option. There's other options. You can do other
Right.
s-
It's good to
yeah.
see that because there's very like I agree, like coming out of like nutrition school, like all that kind of stuff too. No one teaches you how to do business. No one teaches you like, again, you hear about people doing their own thing. And you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's fantastic," but you think they're like an anomaly. Like you think like, "Oh, like they have something that I don't." But really like I never like decided to get into business for myself. It sort of just worked out that way. But I think I also knew I had that inkling in me too that I almost didn't want to follow the rules. Like I didn't want to do what everybody was doing. And I always found that again, like I didn't want to sort of listen to kind of that dreaded diagnosis for people that like this is the end for you and you will always be this way and this is like put you in a box, right? And
Yeah.
that's I think why I went back for myself to school and did that as well. But what kind of advice, I guess, in terms of like business coaching for, I guess, the physiotherapists that you see, or anybody really in business as well, wanting to do this for themselves, is like, when you kind of come out of school, a lot of people sort of like ask, like, well, like, how do you even start? Like, where do you even begin? And I think there are some basics, I think, for people when they first begin. do not sort of jump off that cliff right away. But what is sort of your advice, especially to physios and stuff, if they do want to kind of make their own practice?
Yeah, I think yeah, like first of all, know that it is like totally possible. Like whatever like your dream is, like whether it's working solely for yourself or opening a business with a bunch of locations or doing stuff online, like whatever you want to do, you can
Mhm.
absolutely do it and still work with patients and clients and have a big impact. Um and like you have to, and this is something that I feel like it takes a while, but like you have to learn how to have confidence in yourself and believe in yourself because nobody's going to give you permission to do that.
Right.
Like it's something that you have to kind of like cultivate yourself. Again, like the garden
Yeah.
analogy and metaphor. Um and from there, like if I were just leaving school now and I was like considering maybe starting to work for myself, I would probably spend like a few months just kind of like consuming like as much information as possible, whether it's YouTube videos, podcasts, reading books, both like inside your profession's
Hmm.
realm, so like inside like the PT realm, and like consuming business information in different industries. I think that can be really helpful to gain like a different perspective on things and
Hmm.
learn more about what is possible. Um, and then I say this piece of advice of the like consumption thing with an asterisk because you have to put a limit on it because you'll either drive yourself nuts, you'll get overwhelmed, or you'll just keep doing it forever and never actually take any action on it.
Right.
So if you like just graduated, maybe spending the first like 3 to 6 months out of school kind of like consuming things, doing a little bit of work and seeing if you like working in like the traditional route, which if you do, that's totally fine. Great, if you do. But like working there and then like learning more about what is possible.
Hmm.
And after like about like 3 to 6 months, just like take some time to check in with yourself to see, like is the job that I'm at, is it helping me grow into the provider and the person that I want to be, that I
Hmm.
see for myself? Um, yes or no, kind of check in about that. And even if it is like a good job, do I still have like this like inkling inside me that I do kind of want to grow my own business?
Yeah.
Because that's the other cool thing about it is that like you can craft something that fits into your life right now. Like you don't have to wait for any kind of perfect moment. That's a good piece of advice. There's
Yeah.
never going to be a perfect time for
No.
anything ever.
Hmm.
um and you can get started today. Like you can learn what you need to do in your
Yeah.
state or in your country and how to like submit paperwork to say I'm a legitimate business entity. And you don't have to rush if you don't want to. You can kind of take it
Right.
like step by step and just learn. Something that I suggest for people who are like on the fence about whether they want to see like their own clients and patients is like just find a couple of people to work with for free, like low key, casually, and
Hmm.
practice and try it. And if you don't like seeing private clients, at least right now, at least you tried.
Right.
But if you do practice and you do like it, then you have more information to go on to help you make decisions moving forward and growing the business too.
Right.
Um, so I feel like overall, it's kind of like know that it's possible, learn as much as you can at first and put a ceiling on it, put an
Yeah.
endpoint on that like
Yeah.
learning phase. And then figure out like what the like next actual steps are to start seeing clients on your own and try it out. And then you can kind of go from there and figure out what else you might want to do.
It sounds very similar in terms of anybody kind of going into business, and in terms of, like you first said, the confidence. It sounds like a lot of people kind of sit on that fence and they wait for the perfect time, the perfect moment, and it never is. And I think, like you said, it's kind of just, you have to just get out there and do it. Whether, I find a lot of people are, especially in the health and wellness space, they have a really hard time charging like enough for what they do, because it's kind of like it comes back to sort of them not feeling ethical. but you're helping somebody at the end of the day, and you've gone to school for a long period of time and learned all this stuff. And I think it comes back to that sort of self-doubt, confidence. Why would somebody pay me or anything like that? I would
Mhm.
always suggest like getting something under your belt, like some experience at first. Like you said, go out there, do different types of positions, see, what works, what doesn't. It might be, younger people, might be older people. So it could be a multitude of things. I think for me as well, it's kind of just finding what I don't like first and
Yeah.
then working my way backwards. And I'm like, I didn't really like that, or I could add to this. And I definitely resonated with you when you said it feels like something sort of knocking on the door, even if you're happy wherever you are. But maybe there's this inkling that you're like, hey, I still want to do something. I really want to be able to, above and beyond, help somebody. And I think that's sort of for me, myself as well, like where my business came from, because I never left school thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur one day. I was surrounded by entrepreneurs in different ways, like definitely not what I do. But it's interesting that you could be at a job and think this is okay, like I'm sort of getting by, I'm doing what I kind of went to school for. But if you sort of have still a lot more passion, like you wanted to help people even more so, and for yourself, especially with the physiotherapies, basically making their own businesses and stuff, like I think that is really commendable. And your story and everything, going from where you were to where you are today. So what other words of wisdom do you have for everybody today, Morgan?
Oh my gosh, so many things. Let me just talk about all the times that I tried things and it did not work out.
Uh,
Which I guess like is like honestly like a really good like piece of quote unquote piece of wisdom
mhm,
to share is like I think another thing that will stop people from getting started with their own business or even like pursuing any goals honestly is they will look at other people who are doing the thing that they want to be doing or something
mhm.
similar, and all you will see is the success, in
Yeah,
the like society that we live in. All you will see is the success, and you will see people doing really amazing things, and like reaching their goals. And what you don't see is the years of work that it took to get there
yeah,
and the years of quote unquote failures and mistakes that people have made to get there.
yeah,
Like some of the people right now who are kind of like in the like PT business space that are kind of like the big dogs in the space. They've been doing it for like 10 or 20 years working for
yeah,
themselves. And when they first got started, they didn't know what they were doing. No
no,
idea.
no,
Like most of us have very little to zero business and marketing education in PT and probably in other healthcare professions. So like everybody starts at the exact same place.
mhm,
None of us know what we're doing. And the only thing that's like standing between you and being one of the big dogs is going for it and like
yeah,
trying it. And understanding that when you attempt to do a thing, if it fails for lack of a better term, um, it's not really a failure. You just learned a thing that didn't work. Just like
yeah,
you might learn that there are things that you don't like to do in the profession. Um, it's just a learning opportunity. Um, and I would go into it expecting a lot of failures.
yeah,
And that's the only way you're gonna get where you want to go. Like even with like so with the business coaching program that I have now, like I just celebrated my 5th year anniversary
oh wow,
owning a
yeah,
business last week,
nice,
which is really cool. And like in the past 4 years that I've been doing business coaching, it probably has taken me the entirety of those 4 years to create a program that I am extremely proud of and that I know 100% gets results. And the only reason it got to that place is because I kept trying iteration after iteration after iteration
yeah,
and like testing different variables, working with different people, and trying new things and continuing to learn on my
yeah,
own. It didn't just like poof, like
yeah,
come out of nowhere one day. Um, So yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like really long-winded, but it's something that I want everybody to know is that like if you really want to do this, like expect the failures to come, be happy when they do because like you found a way that didn't work so you can
Right.
pivot and move on to something else. And also like buckle up cuz like you're going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
So expect that.
I love that advice because it's so true, and I think for so many people, they look at the end result and think, well, they're so successful. Like, how am I going to get there? Like, there's such a long road ahead of me. They know all these people, they have all these contacts, or whatever it is. And it's you really have to kind of start in the ground and put those seeds in. And it does take a long time, unfortunately, because you're trying to sort of figure it out. It's like putting together a puzzle with no instructions. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like trying to fit all these pieces in, and some of them work and some of them don't. And I think for me as well, in terms of learning the failures, is that it's the quickest way to get something out the way and be like, that didn't work. Okay, now I have a quicker route. And now I kind of know that doesn't work. So I don't want to go there again, basically. So I think it's just, it helps you sort of discover the path that you should be on. Whereas I think a lot of people focus on the failures and then they get upset because they're like, well, this didn't work over here. So instead of like, well, the door's open over here, go that way. So I really love all the advice and everything that you gave and the story that you did. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, for sure. So, you can find me a few different places. Number one, my website is morganmeese.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which we usually post every other week, a video on there sharing different information about how to start and grow a healthcare business. And you should be able to find it just by searching my name, Morgan Meese, and also on our Instagram at DPT2CEO.
Wonderful. So I'm going to put all of that in the show notes for everybody. So stay tuned for our next episode and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a show. In good health, everybody.